My sister slept with my husband, got pregnant, and then kicked me out of our home. My parents sided with them, so I've cut them all out of my life. Just 3 months ago, I, a 28-year-old woman, was married to the love of my life, Wes, who is 32. We had been together for 4 years. Today I'm going through a divorce, and my entire life and family have shattered. I have no support from my own family. The only people I can count on are my friends. Thank goodness for them, or I'd be in an even worse state than I am now. I don't understand why this happened or what lesson I'm supposed to take from it. All I know is that it's profoundly unfair, and I don't know what I did to deserve being trapped in such a horrific situation. I have an older sister, Meg, who is 34. Our relationship was always just okay. There's a significant age gap between us, so we never really had the chance to form that deep sisterly bond. I wasn't even a teenager when she left for college out of state. I wouldn't say we hated each other. Well, we do now, but as kids, I don't think we did. At least I didn't hate her. However, we also weren't the typical close, best friend-sister duo. There was no Elsa and Anna dynamic here. Our parents never forced us to bond. We did family activities, but both of us were allowed to be our own individuals, which was generally a good thing. Years later, when I went to college, things slightly improved between us. I think because we were both adults, we could relate better. I didn't go to her university, and we weren't in the same state, but we still talked more than before. This is why her actions were the biggest shock of my life. When I was 24, I met Wes. He was an alumnus of my college and attended a party there. We met, hit it off, and started dating soon after. Within 2 years of our relationship, I had introduced him to my family. He proposed a year ago, and we got married 3 months ago. I'm not going to lie. I had a perfect life. I had a fiancé who adored me, a good job in a field I chose, and Wes was doing well too. Everything was going wonderfully until 3 months ago. Meg, on the other hand, had a more challenging personal life. She married at 25 to a man none of us liked. It was clear he wasn't good for her, but no matter what we said, she wouldn't change her mind. So we let her be, as that was all we could do. It wasn't a happy marriage by any stretch. He manipulated her into leaving her job, which she did, making her financially dependent on him. My parents and I repeatedly asked her if she was okay with it and offered support if she wanted to leave, but she always refused and asked us not to interfere. The breaking point for us, or rather, for me, came 5 years ago, before I met Wes, when she claimed I was determined to destroy her marriage because I had no one of my own. I knew then there was no point arguing with her or trying to make her see reason. She was acting like someone blindly in love by choice, and any help offered was seen as an insult. That was the last time I spoke to her about her awful husband, and we had very limited contact for almost 2 years afterward. When I was 25 and she was 31, she finally got divorced. I never asked her the reason because I truly didn't want to meddle, not even a little. She tried to talk to me about it, but I always shut her down. Call me cruel or whatever, but I didn't have the energy or desire to go through that again. For years, I had tried looking out for her, but in the end, I was blamed and shamed for it, and there was no way I was getting involved again. It really angered her. I assumed because she wanted support then, but I was out. This isn't to say I was outright cruel or mean to her. We somewhat patched things up and spent time together, talking and hanging out. She had moved to my state, and she even complained about her problems to me, but I never offered any input. She was welcome to grieve and complain, but I wasn't going to open my mouth when it came to her ex-husband. She knew this, and it frustrated her so much that she sometimes tried to provoke me and get a reaction, but I knew better than to fall for it. Wes, for his part, could never understand the dynamic between me and my sister. He used to defend her, saying her judgment was clouded because of her husband and that I shouldn't hold it against her. According to him, it's natural for people to behave this way when they're in love or when they've made a decision that turns out to be wrong. No one likes to admit they messed up, especially when others warned them not to do something. I agree with him on that. No one likes being told, "I told you so," but outright accusing someone of being a homewrecker is despicable, and I wasn't going to tolerate it. It's ironic how she accused me of being a homewrecker when she's the one who had an affair with my husband. Anyway, Wes and Meg had an okay relationship in the sense that it was as okay as I allowed it to be. I didn't interact with her much, so Wes's contact with her was also limited. We met when we had time, and he always had a more sympathetic view of her than I did. Throughout my relationship with him, I never suspected they were involved. Their interaction was minimal, and I never imagined I'd have to worry about something like this because Wes wasn't the type of man to cheat. We got married 3 months ago, and everything was wonderful. We had a beautiful ceremony. Our families were happy, and everyone attended. It was fantastic. However, we postponed our honeymoon because we wanted to go on a Disneyland cruise. We knew we wouldn't get time off for 2 big vacations. So right after the wedding, we focused on decorating the house. I had moved in with him. The house is in his name, and things were good for the first couple of weeks. Well, I only got a couple of weeks with him because about a month ago, my dear sister called me, crying, saying she needed to talk. I didn't have the energy for another one of her sobbing sessions, and I told Wes the same thing. For a change, she agreed with me. Little did I know what was coming. I told her I was busy, but she kept insisting it was urgent and we needed to meet. I invited her over, and Wes was there too. She looked uncomfortable, and Wes, in hindsight, seemed like he wanted to be anywhere but in that room. She told me she was pregnant and then started crying. Before I could ask anything, she said Wes was the father. It took me a minute to process what she was saying. I looked at her and Wes, who, to his credit, looked as shocked as I was, and I started laughing. I thought it was some elaborate prank, but Wes wasn't laughing, and Meg was still crying. I turned to Wes, asking what the hell was going on, and he muttered, "You can't be pregnant." I asked what he meant by that, and before he could answer, Meg interrupted and said, "They hooked up a month ago," and she was sure Wes was the father. I swear I couldn't think straight for a minute. I just stared at her like a deer in headlights, and when she didn't say anything else, I looked at Wes. He broke down crying, saying it was a one-time thing, it meant nothing, and that he never thought she'd get pregnant, as if that was the issue. I told her to leave, and I told Wes to get out too. I couldn't look at them anymore and needed time to process what had happened. Meg looked at me like I was the one who had committed some unforgivable crime. She had the audacity to say that she should be the one staying in the house since she was pregnant and I was not. It took every ounce of self-control not to slap her right there. I looked at Wes in disbelief, and he told her to leave, which she did. Wes left too, though I don't think they left together, but at this point, who knows? If he could get her pregnant, he surely could leave with her. I think I sat there for hours, unable to think. My mind was just numb. I don't know where the time went, and I had a few calls from Wes during that time. But I had turned off my phone because he was the last person I wanted to talk to. I couldn't believe he had betrayed me like this. This wasn't something I thought he was capable of. I couldn't even process the betrayal from Meg, because I was still in shock over what my own husband had done. Then I saw a text from her. It essentially said that while she was sorry for what happened, it couldn't be changed. She was pregnant. She knew she was going to keep the baby, and it was in the best interest of the entire family for me to move out so she could move in with Wes, allowing him to take care of her and bond with the baby when it was born. I was appalled at her audacity. I couldn't believe she had the nerve to say this to me after sleeping with my husband. But I also knew I couldn't stay with Wes anymore. Despite my numbness, I knew that from the moment he confirmed it was his child. I couldn't stay with a cheater, and I couldn't stay in such a messed up family dynamic. I knew I had to leave. Whether or not she moved in was between Wes and her, but I knew I had to leave. I decided to call my mom and dad to tell them what had happened, but before I got the chance, my mom called me first. She told me Meg had spoken to her, and while it wasn't an ideal situation, I had to understand that this was Meg's last chance to be a mother. I asked Mum if she was serious and if she understood the gravity of what Meg had done. Mum was quiet for a moment and said I was always welcome to come back home to her and Dad. But Meg was 34 and she deserved to have a family after what happened with her ex-husband. I told Mum there were hundreds of other men she could have had a family with, and she couldn't be defending her sleeping with my husband. Mum said she understood I was hurt, but I had to look at the bigger picture. She said, maybe it was God's will because Meg got pregnant so easily, and if it was, I had to make way for his plan rather than focus on my own life. I cried for the first time after hearing this from Mum. I couldn't believe she was supporting Meg over me when I was clearly the one who had been wronged. I disconnected the call. I knew there was nothing left for me. In the snap of a finger, my entire family had been taken from me, my husband, my sister, and my parents. I was all alone, and there was nothing I could do to change that. That's when I knew for sure I was moving out and going no contact with all of them. They could all eat crap. This was just too much for me to handle. It's still too much. It's only been about 2 months since I found out, and I hadn't thought they'd drag me into more drama, but here we are. I can't escape them, unfortunately. Anyway, that night I texted Wes that I still didn't want to see him for a couple of days. He called me back immediately, but I didn't answer. He sent a barrage of texts apologizing and saying he didn't know what had come over him, but I wasn't in the mood to engage. I called my friend Sarah and briefly told her what was up and that I needed a place to stay until I could figure something out. She told me I could stay as long as I needed. She came over with some wine and pasta, and we ate while I cried and cried like I hadn't cried in years. She stayed with me for 2 whole days. Thank God for good friends, and helped me pack my stuff. It was so much easier to deal with things having her around. There were moments when I went completely numb and couldn't get up, and she took charge and got things sorted. Once my stuff was packed and loaded in the car, I called Wes and told him he could come home now. It took him 20 minutes to arrive, and when he did, he couldn't look me in the eye. He said he was sorry and that he was glad I was giving him a chance to talk, even though he had no justification. He still hoped I'd forgive him. I didn't say anything, just handed him the house keys and got in the car. By the time he realized what had happened, I was already gone with Sarah. I haven't had any contact with him since. He has sent texts, but I haven't responded. I filed for divorce immediately, and while he initially tried to fight it, he eventually stopped. I stayed with Sarah for about 3 weeks before finding a place of my own. It's a small studio, but it's more than enough for me. Wes is the only one who's still unblocked on my phone, and that's on my lawyer's advice. I've gone no contact with my parents and sister, and I prefer to keep it that way because I don't have the energy for their toxicity anymore. I thought they would get the hint and stay out of my life, but I guess that's not how it's supposed to be because now I saw Meg on my doorstep. I don't know how she got my address or what she wanted, but there she was, saying she needed to talk. I closed the door in her face because I didn't want to see her, let alone talk to her, but she didn't leave. She kept banging on my door, and I told her to go away or I'd call the cops, but she didn't leave. She did stop knocking, but she didn't leave. I found out the hard way after about 20 minutes of silence. I assumed she was gone and decided to go out. I got into my car, but what I couldn't see was that she had followed me in her car. I stopped on the way to grab coffee, and she stopped me there. She said I had to talk to her, that I owed it to her. I yanked my arm away and told her I didn't owe her anything and she could get lost for all I cared. She said she understood I hated her at the moment, but as the aunt to her baby, I had a duty and had already failed to fulfill it. I had no idea what she was talking about, and I told her in no uncertain terms that I wasn't her kid's aunt. I'm no aunt to a child from my ex-husband, and I needed to be kept out of this mess. She said if I had warned her about Wes, she wouldn't be in this position, and I wouldn't have had to end my marriage. I didn't know what she was talking about, and I admit at that point I should have walked away, but curiosity got the better of me. I asked her what was wrong, and she broke down crying. She said she had no idea Wes would be such a terrible partner and that I had been living with someone like that for so long. She said he didn't help around the house at all. There was no emotional support from his side, and it felt like living with a zombie. She had hoped that as the pregnancy progressed, he would bond with the baby, if not with her, but she said it was worse than being with her ex-husband. He did nothing around the house, no chores, no spending time with her, nothing. He had even told her she shouldn't expect him to be involved with the baby. He said he was willing to keep her and the kid in the house and would handle the finances, but the house and baby were her responsibility. She said she tried dishing it back by not preparing his meals or doing his laundry, but somehow he managed his own chores and went to work, leaving her feeling helpless. She said if she had known he would be this way, she wouldn't have revealed who the father was and would have raised the kid on her own. But I had led her to believe that he was a wonderful partner, which is why she dropped the bomb. Now her life was worse than before. I told her I had no idea how she had the nerve to blame me after sleeping with my husband, but I wished her luck, and she could do whatever she wanted since I was out. She said I couldn't leave her like this, but I wasn't in the mood to listen anymore, so I left the cafe. Now I'm sitting in my car typing this out because I don't know what to do, how to feel, or who to talk to. This is such a big mess, and I don't know if I'll ever be able to make my way out of this. I just hope she doesn't contact me again, and I hope Wes doesn't find out she met me. I'm worried if he does, he'll start texting and calling me again, and I don't have the energy to deal with that anymore. Edit. I went through all the comments, and they've opened my eyes to what really happened. I was too stunned to process Meg's reaction, but now I realize she may have purposely baby-trapped Wes because she thought he was a good partner, especially after her horrible experience with her ex-husband. I'm not excusing Wes. He hurt me beyond repair, but the more I think about it, the more likely it seems her entire tirade earlier was about how she felt cheated because Wes wasn't the partner I had propped him up to be. But why should that bother her? Why would she say that if I told her the truth, things would be the same? It's disgusting and appalling how vile she can be. I can't believe I second-guessed myself after what she said. The confusing part is that Wes has never been the way she described him. He's always been so hands-on, and her description seems like a lie. I've never known him to be a slacker, and this behavior baffles me completely. I don't know why he's doing this, and I don't want to know either. I'm still struggling with the betrayal, and it's been very hard to adjust to this new normal. I don't want more drama at their expense. They can have the mess they've created. I'm out. Update 1. I wasn't out of this, no matter how hard I try. I keep getting pulled back into their chaos. I had no intention of telling Wes about my meeting with Meg, and I had no desire to contact her again. I had left them to their own devices, but Wes showed up at my house. I don't know how they know where I live. I know Sarah hasn't told them, and I haven't had anyone over who would snitch. Maybe they're stalking me from work, or Wes still has access to my location, though I know that's not possible. Anyway, when I opened the door, it looked like I was meeting a ghost. He was a shell of himself. His cheeks were sunken, and he had dark circles as big as craters. If I didn't absolutely hate him, I might have rushed over and hugged him. That was my reflex, if I'm being honest, but I had to control myself. He said he needed to talk to me one last time and wouldn't bother me again. I let him in, and he spoke. For about half an hour, he apologized over and over, saying he was disgusted with himself. He told me that Meg came over one day while I was at work looking for me, and when he told her I wasn't there, she broke down crying. She started off by saying she regretted not having a closer relationship with me and would do anything to fix that. Wes said she asked for his help in making this happen. She was crying a lot, and he said he was consoling her, and one thing led to another. I couldn't control my anger when he said that. I told him there was no justification for what he'd done, and he said he knew he had screwed up and had no excuse. He said he just wanted me to know what had happened. He swore that was the only time anything like that had happened, and he had wanted to tell me immediately. But Meg begged him not to, even when she told us she was pregnant. He said he was against her keeping it and had asked her to abort it, but she was adamant about keeping the baby. Wes said if I gave him one more chance, he would cut off all contact with her and the baby and start fresh with me. He said he had been acting like a terrible partner on purpose to show Meg they would never be a family, no matter what she tried to pretend. He told me my parents and Meg were manipulating him into accepting the situation, but he knew it was wrong. I asked if he was going to marry Meg, and he said he was in the process of kicking her out. He tried underhanded tactics, but they hadn't worked, so now he had to face it head-on and kick her out himself. He still held out hope I'd forgive him, and he said he'd chosen to wait for me. I told him there was almost no chance I'd ever go back to him because I couldn't get over the betrayal. I said nothing could be worse than him sleeping with my own sister. I told him he had the luxury of ignoring what happened and moving on, but I was stuck with his family for life. There was already too much unavoidable involvement on my part, and I didn't want to complicate things further. He begged me to reconsider, but I stayed firm. I told him I was going to proceed with the divorce, no matter what, and there was no point dragging it out. He looked heartbroken, and it was just so sad. Despite everything, I still love the guy. That's the worst part. I love him so much, but I can never overlook what he's done. That's the tragedy of it all. Update 2. For those waiting for a dramatic update, I'm sorry to disappoint you. I've gone completely low contact with Wes, and the divorce will be finalized. In a couple of weeks, he's kicked Meg out, and she somehow found a way to blame me for it, but honestly, at this point, I don't even care. My parents tried getting in touch with me to argue Meg's case to Wes. I don't know what kind of drugs they're on to even suggest something like that, but I didn't respond. There's no point talking to people so indifferent to other people's pain that they don't even know what to say. Other than that, life is normal. I mean, as normal as it can be in these circumstances. There are still days when I break down uncontrollably, but overall I'm doing better. I have my friends, I have my job, and I keep myself busy. I don't think I should expect any more from myself so soon. I genuinely feel the worst is over, and I know I'll be going no contact with the baby too. I know it's not the baby's fault, but it's best for me to stay as far away from this mess as possible. The decision to stay as far away from this chaotic situation as possible is not just a choice but a necessity for my mental and emotional survival. The betrayal I've endured, my sister Meg's affair with my husband Wes, her pregnancy, and my parents' inexplicable support for her has shattered the foundation of my family and my trust in those closest to me. The baby, though innocent, is a living reminder of the pain inflicted by Meg and Wes, and engaging with that situation would only reopen wounds I'm desperately trying to heal. Keeping my distance is the only way I can protect myself from being pulled back into their toxic orbit. The aftermath of this betrayal has forced me to rebuild my life from scratch. Moving into a small studio apartment, relying on friends like Sarah for support, and focusing on my job have been my anchors. These small steps toward independence feel like monumental victories in the face of such loss. My friends have been my lifeline, offering not just a place to stay but also emotional support that my family failed to provide. Their presence has shown me that I can create a new sense of family, one built on trust and mutual respect rather than blood ties. My job, too, has given me purpose, a reason to get up each day and keep moving forward. Even when the weight of grief feels unbearable, going no contact with Meg, my parents, and soon Wes, once the divorce is finalized, is a boundary I've set to reclaim my peace. Meg's audacity to show up at my doorstep, blaming me for her poor choices and Wes's behavior, only reinforced the need for this boundary. Her attempt to guilt me into feeling responsible for her child's future was manipulative and absurd. I refuse to be dragged into her narrative or to play the role of the supportive aunt to a child born from such betrayal. Similarly, my parents' defense of Meg, citing her age and past struggles as justification, showed me that their loyalty lies with her, not with fairness or empathy for my pain. Cutting them off, though painful, was necessary to protect myself from further emotional harm. Wes's visit, where he begged for forgiveness and claimed he was sabotaging his relationship with Meg to prove his loyalty to me, only complicated my resolve. Despite his apologies, the trust we once had is irreparably broken. His actions, sleeping with my sister and allowing her to live in our home, created a chasm too wide to bridge. Even though I still love him, that love is now tainted by the reality of his choices. The divorce, set to finalize in a couple of weeks, will be my final step in closing this chapter. I'm not naive enough to believe it will erase the pain, but it will give me the freedom to focus on my own healing. Staying away from this mess also means letting go of the need to understand why this happened. I've spent countless hours